We can go ahead and try again.
6:02, we can call this meeting to order. There we go. We'll start with the roll call. Kayla?
Here.
Fred?
Here.
Kyle is excused for the evening. Lene?
Here.
Patrick, myself is here. And Catherine?
Here.
Do we have any changes to the agenda?
Yeah, just a couple. Looks like I made an error. The third guest is supposed to be Jacob Pinney Johnson. Just didn't put the name in the correct field. So I just wanted number E3 to reflect that on everyone's agendas. The other alteration that I'd like to make is moving the new commissioner appointment recommendation to directly after the guests. So the potential new commissioner could get out of here early if they needed to. So if that's okay with everyone else.
Okay, motion to approve the agenda as amended?
I motion to approve.
A second.
Okay. The approval of minutes from both the April and June meetings.
So for April, okay, I'll take Kyle's place here. Number 4. What is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th row. Reaching to reaching out. And then she was able to someone with the tribe. And then talk about this within our, no, that's fine. I think that was the ones I found in 4. And I don't know what was said then, so I can't help you. Sorry.
Okay, under E6, O'Connor Fund Grant Making, second line, Kyle's name is spelled wrong.
Anything else from anyone in the April minutes? I'm assuming that was in the April minutes, Catherine? Okay.
You can move to approve the April minutes as amended.
Second.
And then for the June minutes?
Minor omissions of letters and some spelling. And a quick read through that I had on item D. 2, 4, 6 lines up from the bottom of the page. Says the other term is called the Michigan Manual for, should be an E added to that. Freedmen's Bureau, right? Is that correct? Progress? I thought it was Bureau.
We can check on that later, but you're correct. Then it needs to be Friedman's, not Fredman's, yes.
I'm sure it's Freedman, isn't it?
Yep.
And further down in that, halfway on the second page, it says asking what the Historical Preservation Commission can do to support the cultural project, asking what, take out a the probably there.
Yep.
And then 716 Pioneer Street, Tim Allen, known as Tim the Two Man. I think there's an N has to be added there on the known.
Yep. Noted.
And I thought there was a another one, but that's all I recall.
Number 2 on page, well, first of all, this says page 4 or 3. Shouldn't that be 3 or 4? Anyway, is that Lynn Holton? That's Houghton. Who's Lynn Houghton?
Yes, it's got to be.
Am I right?
I think so.
All right. I didn't know who that was.
Thank you, noted.
Also under that same section, I think it should be made clear that the last sentence, they now teach an oral history class, in the sentence before it, the mobile history unit, that's from Eastern Michigan University, the historic preservation program, not, it talks about Lynn Houghton at Western and then doesn't introduce Eastern's program, so maybe that needs to be rethought.
Thank you.
Number 3, Grave Issue Squad, is that the name? And why is merge in quotations, and why is the W with? Is that the name of the, maybe that's the name of the group, I don't know.
Nope, so Grave Issue Squad is the name that the Historic Preservation Commission here has for the gravestone cleanings. Merge is in quotes because that was lifted from the actual agenda and with.
Okay. Oh, okay, thank you.
Yep.
Anything else?
I think we did pretty good without Kyle here.
Yep. All right, do we have a motion to approve as amended?
I'll move to approve as amended.
A second.
Okay, moving on, public comments before we get to our guests. All right, so Gary Swain from the Friends of Historic Kalamazoo Cemeteries.
So I thank you for this opportunity to talk about the fairly new organization, the Friends of Kalamazoo Historic Cemeteries. I'd like, over the next few minutes, to explain who we are, what our mission is, some of the things that we're doing, and our intermediate and long-term plans for projects. If you can, on this first slide, this is a group of volunteers that assisted us just a tad over a month ago. I think it was June 1st. We had about 30 volunteers on an Eagle Scout project at Mountain Home Cemetery. And we accomplished an amazing amount of work. This is, I believe, the 14th Eagle Scout project that we have managed since 2018. The bulk of them in Riverside Cemetery. The last couple in Mountain Home. Among other things, we installed 2 new gravestones for Civil War soldiers that never had them. So, our story begins with a recognition that cemeteries are the time capsules of our community. These outdoor museums are repositories of our community's history, our culture, social norms, and they're invaluable genealogical resources if you're a genealogist and researching your family history. But there's also a recognition that these important assets are facing a variety of, in some cases, existential threats. We'll elaborate in just a minute. This whole project got started over the last 10 years. My experience, I'm a retired senior VP of marketing and sales for a plastics company, which doesn't necessarily qualify me as a preservationist. But since my retirement, I've been involved with a group, an organization called the Sons of Union Veterans of the Civil War. And we're a group who's trace our ancestry, most of us, to people who fought for the Union during the Civil War. And one of the primary focuses that we have is keeping the memory green of those that fought during the Civil War. So our efforts, to a large degree, are spearheaded or focused on taking care of monuments and the gravestones of Civil War soldiers. We are the legal heir of the Grand Army of the Republic, which was, if you're not familiar with that term, the first veterans organization, national veterans organization in the United States, formed just after the Civil War. They ultimately closed as they chose not to bring in new members. You had to be a Civil War member. But we are, by act of Congress, the legal heirs of that. And initially, we were, in fact, sons of those veterans. In Riverside, there is a monument. If you're familiar with the cemetery, you may recall that at its highest point, right in the middle of the cemetery, is a Civil War monument. That's called the GAR lot. We actually own that lot. And there are approximately 150 Civil War soldiers buried up there. Over the last 30 years, we have placed about 70 of those gravestones. And that's probably about 40% of the gravestones that we've placed around the four-county area that our local organization is responsible for. But it became apparent over time that there was a broader need, that well beyond just the veterans, there needed to be some effort to preserve a lot of the pioneers, particularly in Mountain Home Cemetery. So 2 years ago, in 2022, we established the Friends of Kalamazoo Historic Cemeteries, and we deliberately didn't call it the Friends of Mountain Home or the Friends of Riverside because we wanted a broader portfolio. We are a Michigan nonprofit corporation. We are a federal 501c3 corporation, and we're operated as a directorship organization. We can have members, we may have members, but the organization is managed by the directorship. I am the president of that organization, which is why I'm here tonight. Our board of directors currently consists of Marge Kars, who is a former president of the Ladies Library Association. She is some of you may know her. She is also has a bachelor's degree in history. Mike Culp, who is retired now but taught Civil War history at KVCC. Bob Henkin, who's a local attorney, very active in the veterans community. In fact, I think it was last year he was voted Veteran of the Year in the Kalamazoo County area. And Dr. Sharon Carlson, who was the director of the Zhang Archives at WMU. She was the president of the Michigan Historical Society, and she is the current president of the Ladies Library Association. Our mission, and we've tried to refine this of late, the Friends of the Kalamazoo Historic Cemeteries is dedicated to being a collaborative partner with the city of Kalamazoo to preserve, restore, and conserve the city's historic cemeteries and to create educational opportunities to inform the public about the rich history of our community. Our primary focus, as I just mentioned, are Mountain Home Cemetery and Riverside. And even though we have probably spent 80% of our efforts over the last 8 or 9 years in Riverside, it's our view that certainly from the pioneers that are permanent residents of that cemetery, that's going to get the bulk of our attention for the immediate future. Cemeteries around the country are facing a number of threats, some of them existential. A lot of it has to do with a cultural change that's happening right now. The NFDA, the National Funeral Directors Association, estimates that in this past year, only 35% of the deaths in this country were buried in cemeteries. The bulk of the remainder, were cremated. The net result of that is that their business plan for cemeteries is not as valid as it once was. In most cases, cemeteries had to be freestanding, self-funding organization. They made their money by selling new plots. So as you can imagine, with nearly two-thirds of the deaths being cremations, they're not being buried in cemeteries. and perpetual funds are insufficient between that and the sales of plots to cover the cost of just managing these essential organizations within our community. Some of the problems that we see facing them, that we see from our preservation perspective, are severalfold. One is vandalism. Mountain Home has been the subject of vandalism on a number of occasions and continues to be on a small scale, not to the degree that it once was. Riverside has seen some of those itself. Maintenance crews can be a problem. These cemeteries were designed during the horse and buggy era. They didn't anticipate 400 or 500 pound gas-powered machines doing 20 miles an hour down through them, and it can have a deleterious effect. Nature also plays a key role. Both of these two cemeteries, Kalamazoo's two largest cemeteries, are built on glacial moraines. And as a consequence, they're very, very hilly and very steep. The result of that is that hills, geologically, have a tendency to move. So over time, when a burial is on a hillside, the gravestones in particular can be toppled, can be broken. Another issue we face is during the 19th century and early 20th century, many of the monument-type gravestones that have multiple layers were connected using iron pins. As time goes on, spalling, which is another word for deteriorating through rusting and of those pins. As the pins rust, they expand, they'll break the stone, and you end up with a stone that's, in many cases, not repairable. But we have repaired a number of them, and we'll continue to do so. It's beyond our skill level at this point to do that, so we hire it done by professionals. And even though cemeteries are places which are repositories of historical events, sometimes cemeteries are involved in historical events, as Mountain Home was in 1980, when it was part of the path of that infamous tornado that went through Kalamazoo. That's not top of mind to many in the community, as you might expect, for good reason. That was the tragic occasion of 5 deaths in our community, and plus there was a significant multi-million-dollar damage done. But as you can see, and I don't know if you probably can't see it that well, but in this newspaper photograph, which shows about a third of the cemetery, there are multiple monuments that were down, many of them broken beyond repair. The city reset those that could be repaired over time. Many, many trees were down and were never replaced. A lot of the gravestones have just disappeared. Some of the things we run into are restoration failures. And part of our focus is to teach people the correct way of restoring many of these gravestones. Most of these repairs were well-meaning but ill-conceived. As an example, if you look at the photographs, the upper left-hand corner, one cemetery in an adjacent county to Kalamazoo County, the sexton had additional help from the city during the winter months, and so they took a lot of the broken gravestones and created a mold, put concrete in the mold, and put the broken pieces within that mold. And that seems on the surface like a good way of repairing that gravestone, or at least conserving it. The problem with that is that today we use Portland cement. Portland cement is a much harder product than the stones themselves. So as they freeze and thaw, they freeze it and thaw at a different rate, and as a result, it'll break up that stone. You can see other forms of repair. The one in the center, we're not sure what they use, some sort of putty or a setting compound, and it wasn't meant to repair gravestones, and it creates an unsightly, it covers up some of the lettering on the gravestone, and my all-time favorite are the two photos on the bottom. That's a gravestone in Riverside Cemetery, which someone attempted to repair about 2 years ago, and they used, we can only guess, something like Gorilla Glue, which is a fine product. It just was not made for this kind of work. And to me, it looks like something out of a horror movie. It looks like something you might have seen in War of the Worlds, where an alien plant form was growing out of it. So this not only didn't repair the gravestone, but it caused more damage. This is going to create a great deal of difficulty in trying to repair this particular type of damage. The Friends of Kalamazoo Historic Cemeteries ask all of our volunteers to abide by 4 key rules. First and foremost, safety first. We don't want anybody hurt in the cemetery. The type of stones that most gravestones are made out of weigh anywhere from 160 pounds to 180, sometimes up to over 200 pounds per cubic foot. So if you look at this tipping gravestone on your lower left, that one looks like it could fall at any point, and that could not only do severe damage, it could be fatal kind of damage. Every year we read of children playing in cemeteries, and sadly, they are killed by falling gravestones. Second, we ask our volunteers that anything we do no harm. Use the right techniques, use the right materials, don't use metal on these gravestones, any type of metal product for fear of scratching and damages in stones. And don't use procedures and products. Don't use power washers as an example. A power washer can remove in one fell swoop all of the soiling and biological growth on a gravestone, but it can also remove about 50 years of the readable life at a minimum. Sometimes it can destroy the surface entirely. We also ask our volunteers to, if they're not working with us specifically, to seek permission from the appropriate authority, frequently a sexton. Even though it may be a family gravestone, and many of the people who come to our volunteer events ask to take home cleaners, we make that available for them so that they can go ahead and clean their family gravestones. But even though their family may own those stones, it's as a courtesy, they should notify the appropriate authorities that they're going to be there and what, in fact, they're doing. And then finally, we ask that they show respect to the deceased. If there's a funeral going on, make yourself invisible. Do not be within sight of that. Secondly, when you're working on a stone, don't do the obvious things. Don't set your tools on another gravestone. Don't sit down on gravestones. I've seen that multiple times. Some of the recent projects that we've done, if you're familiar with some detail with Riverside as an example, there is a section, it's called HH. It's across from the parking lot of Borges Hospital, and it's the home of about 570, at last count, veterans from World War I and World War II. As those stones get older, they develop a lot of biological growth, a lot of soiling from pollutants and air pollution and so on. And I think it took 3 or maybe 4 Eagle Scout projects, each time with a group of volunteers from 12 to 20 to clean all of those stones. And as you can see, I think the last project was the group on the left, and ultimately we finished that section and are continuing on several other sections. We're quite proud of what we accomplished there. Those stones, the readable life of those stones is dramatically enhanced by that effort. You may or may not be familiar with the name of Benjamin Orcutt. He has a monument in Mountain Home Cemetery. It stands very close to West Main. If you're heading east, you get a little bit better view of it. It's in the southeast corner. Benjamin Orcutt was a Civil War veteran. Before the war, he was a sheriff of Kalamazoo, before it was a city. And he returned to those duties when he came home. About 2 years after he returned home, he became, sadly, the first law enforcement officer to die in the line of duty. He was killed during a jailbreak attempt when the jailhouse was where the old county courthouse is right now. So the city gave him or supplied this monument to Colonel Orcutt. And as you can see, over the last century and a half, that photo on the left shows deposits on there that are mostly pollution. There was very little biological growth on this monument. This pollution is some of the hardest to remove. That was a 2-year project, cleaning that gravestone. And we finally had our greatest success with a poultice of a product called Orvis. The city got involved 2 or 3 years ago and decided to take on the task of replacing Eliza Walbridge's gravestone. Her husband was the Republican congressman from our area from 1855 to 1859. He was away at Congress when Abraham Lincoln visited Kalamazoo. So she invited Lincoln to tea at her house. She was his tea hostess while he visited Kalamazoo. Sadly, her gravestone, which has her and her husband are right at the top of the hill overlooking West Main, is a mortise and tenon kind of stone, which means a slot with a tablet type of stone on top of it. For a variety of reasons, those mortises, the base, tend not to last more than 75 to 100 years. Hers was broken, as you can see. The front half of it was broken, and the stone was slowly starting to disappear into the ground. So the city took it upon themselves to replace that stone and had a custom stone cut to replace that base, and had the stone cleaned and reset. We took on the task of cleaning David Walbridge's stone, and so the two look fantastic sitting there on top of the hill. We're very proud of that whole effort. Some of the projects that we're working on currently, this is a family plot at Mountain Home Cemetery, and there was a shrub planted next to it, probably with all the best of intentions. It was called a winter creeper, which is a non-native shrub. It's considered today an invasive shrub, and it pretty much overwhelmed the family monument and a number of the gravestones, and its roots had a tendency to upend some of the gravestones, the individual gravestones below it. So we have removed that shrub. We just finished the project, as a matter of fact, this past month, and reset many of the stones. So and cleaned all of them. So you can see there's a dramatic difference in those stones from 2 years ago to today. There was another one, and you'll see the sign and the flag identifying a soldier's grave in that shrub. That was an obelisk. It was probably damaged during the hurricane, but we removed that shrub. It was a common privet, which is not native to America. It too is considered invasive, and the photo on the right was just taken a couple of weeks ago. Over on the far left, you can just see the edge of the shaft of the obelisk, and the root system is incredibly extensive for that. It caused that base to be off level, and it also, I'm sure you can't see it in the photographs you're looking at, but a woodchuck made a home underneath it, so that continues to cause deterioration. And as you can see, there's also gravestones of his other family members that are all laying on their sides. So our next effort is to develop a plan to how to replace that. We think we can put the shaft back on the monument once we get it leveled and plumb. A couple of the other projects, the gravestone on the left is Nichols West, whose death date was 1849. Mountain Home was formed in 1850. Our records show that he was the first burial there. His gravestone, well, the parts that you can see are broken into 6 separate pieces. So we hope to get started this summer on repairing that gravestone. On the right is a monument to Edward Israel, who was every time you travel up West Main Street, you pass that historical marker. Edward Israel was on an Arctic expedition, and he died during that expedition over the winter, and he's buried in Jewish Mountain Home, which is a separate cemetery adjacent to Mountain Home. Many people aren't aware that they're 2 separate cemeteries, but we have a good history of working with the owners of that cemetery. We put flags on their soldiers' graves every year. And maybe the last project I'll point out is a hard-to-pronounce name, Epaphroditus Ransom, who is the only governor from the area, from Kalamazoo, and he has a family plot. He was one of the original trustees of Mountain Home Cemetery. We believe that, well, what you're looking at in the left-hand side is a base for an obelisk. We believe that base was probably, or that shaft was probably damaged too severely to repair, because we've probed the area. We cannot find any remnant of it except for one small stone. We're working with a couple of stone suppliers. So far, we have been unable to find a piece of granite that sufficiently matches the one that is already on there. So we're continuing that effort to try to do that. We would like to reset that base and replace that shaft if we can find it. On the photo to the right, you'll see a little sign on the ground there, and that's one of Epaphroditus' son, Willis Ransom, who was a captain in a Kansas Cavalry Regiment during the Civil War. He is buried there, and he never had a gravestone. So a month ago, that was another of the gravestones that we added to the cemetery. So finally, there are a whole host of projects that are in process right now and that are our immediate priorities. We want to complete the cemetery of the fallen tablets in Mountain Home. We're about half done. We have found about 117 fallen tablet stones. Probably not going to be another 100 or so, probably about half that amount, because the rest of the sections are newer, and that tablet kind of gravestone went out of fashion. But we still expect to find others. We think that's going to keep us busy for quite some time, both cleaning those, repairing them, and resetting them. Many will be tabbed mortise and tenon stones, so we're going to have to replace the bases. So that's going to be a long-lasting project for us. We hope to start later this month a tree and vegetation survey of Mountain Home Cemetery. On August 3rd, we are co-hosting with the Atlas Preservation Company a 48-state tour that they do every summer of cemeteries around the country where they teach gravestone preservation. And we're expecting a large turnout for that event. It's a free event, so everyone's invited. We also we're working on developing right now a living history tour of Mountain Home Cemetery for next year, probably September. And during that tour, we'll have 5, 6, 7 of the deceased residents of Mountain Home that'll be portrayed by an actor, and we'll lead a tour and describe what occurred during their life, the significant events that occurred, and what they experienced in that era living in Kalamazoo. We hope to have one more gravestone cleaning project with our volunteers in September. I mentioned we're working on developing a restoration plan for the rest of the fallen gravestones, and we're also just starting to our work on developing a website and our social media. And finally, I mentioned to you and told you who the members of our board of directors are. We're looking to expand that board. We'd like to probably double it. We can find people who share our passion for this work and who may have some specific skill that will be helpful. So that's it. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them. Good. Thank you for your attention.
Yeah, thank you, Gary.
You bet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, we have Lakota Hobia.
Do you mind if I approach
Yeah, not a problem.
Yeah, that's fine.
We're not super serious. Yeah, thank you.
Mano Pokonyat, Bojo Jai Ginwa, Lakota Hobai and Deshnakas, Bodwe Wadmi Koyan Dao Shishibani of Nedabin Dagwes Mang on Dodem, Cleveland, Ohio, Mina, St. Mary's, Kansas, in Dochbia, Mina, Portage, Michigan, and Diane. Good evening, everyone. Hello, my name is Lakota Hobai. I serve as the Tribal Historic Preservation Officer for the Matchpanashiwish Band of Potawatomi Indians. In my introduction, I mentioned that I am Potawatomi, but I am enrolled at a different community, so I am a member of the Citizen Band of Potawatomi located down in Shawnee, Oklahoma. And so today I'm here to present on some of the work that we've been doing with the City of Kalamazoo overall in regards to the Bronson Park Mound. And I am joined today by Matchpanashiwish Band's Vice Chairwoman, Jody Palmer. And so with that, this has been a project kind of long in the making, long before even I started in my position and even before the tribe had a Tribal Historic Preservation Office. And so this began about the mid-2010s in particular, where there were efforts made between the tribe and the City of Kalamazoo to demarcate actually on the landscape the boundaries of the 1821 reservation that was established under the Treaty of 1821 Chicago, or the Treaty of Chicago of 1821. And so from there, there were further conversations about various efforts and kind of general concerns that exist throughout thinking about Kalamazoo not just as the city landscape, the last 200 years of history, but really thinking much more broadly about the history of what we call Gizikamaseh. That is the Potawatomi name for the village that was located here, and that eventually became shrunken in the 1821 reservation. So with that, the Bronson Park Mound is one of the last remaining mounds in the area. And so in that sense, it is very symbolic, within the city limits of understanding kind of much more broader historical interpretations of this area. And so with that, we have been working since about 2019 in terms of the city had contracted services for a GPR survey, ground penetrating radar, and an interpretive report. And so from there, the recommendations were made to pursue establishing signage that could provide education about the history, but also the cultural importance of mounds to Potawatomi and other Anishinaabe or Native Americans. And so with that, unfortunately, the pandemic happened. And so much of this work was paused in light of everything that everybody was dealing with. But then also as things began to reinitiate, there was a substantial increase in cost. So the thought was to continue pausing at least for some time to see what would occur with those costs, if those costs would come down. Unfortunately, they have not. And so what we have been doing is then trying to figure out how do we make this project still feasible. So with that, we've split this project into two phases. So the first phase is specifically establishing the 4 markers that are included as attachments in your packet. And then the second phase would be kind of the landscaping that has been proposed to create natural barriers. So culturally, it's inappropriate for folks to be walking on the mound, sitting on the mound, and in particularly letting children play on the mound. And so with that, we're really hoping to increase that awareness and just provide some, not invasive, but something that, we would have historically done to kind of protect those areas. So with that, our department has been able to set aside at least $5,000 for this project. And the estimated total cost for the project is approximately $12,000 to $15,000. And that is specifically for the fabrication of the markers and along with the installation processes. So with that, we were seeking a match of 5,000 potentially from kind of the set aside for the Historic Preservation Commission, or however that should work, to help assist with getting these markers in place. And then included in the packet, you'll see the mock-ups. These are still in draft form. For the most part, the content has been finalized. There's some finalizations that we need to undertake in regards to the images used, along with, you'll see that there's quite a bit of content. It's quite lengthy. So one of the things that we want to do is take one last stab at it to kind of shorten some of that content so it's more approachable and, you know, readable for anybody who wants to stop by and learn more about the mound. So with that, does anybody have any questions?
Do you have the original? Because I don't think the pictures came out. Oh, this is the.
Is it?
Is this the?
And just to
mock-up?
clarify, I'm pretty sure that there's some language maybe that's been altered and it can be seen to reflect what these are as the signs. Is that correct?
Pardon?
Is the later pages within, sorry, this document kind of reflect what's on this one with placeholders to reflect these?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so the images that you'll see are specifically on the mock-ups themselves, but granted, because it's an 8 by 11 page, the text is small, so I printed off the kind of draft Word document so it's easier to read.
Thank you. Thank you, Lenny.
Oh, this is the markers.
Any other questions from commissioners?
I saw your presentation at the Historic Preservation Conference, and one thing that stood out that I'm interested in is you seem to have an issue with the map of land acknowledgement or things you show. Is that a debate within the Native American community about use of maps, or?
So I think it's not necessarily a debate. It's just there's been a struggle in terms of how do you map territories that weren't necessarily bounded by, say, like what you see in Europe with national boundaries, where you have overlapping territories. And so that's definitely, I don't think there's necessarily a debate about whose territory is where, but more about how do we depict those shared territories.
That'd be hard to do.
Yeah.
Is there a particular map you like the best, or?
I tend to just point to all of them and then kind of work backwards and kind of show how each one provides a purpose that we can learn from and use for interpretation purposes, but that it, you know, and that's the thing. So my background is I went to school to be a social studies teacher. So, I mean, this is something that I would always challenge my students to try and understand of, you know, there's a specific project in place and mapping things and giving these geopolitical boundaries. And so, you know, that still continues to play out in all realms. And so sorry to kind of get off track, but
No.
I think when we can kind of look more broadly to kind of make those determinations to show the larger picture, I think that's how we get at the root of kind of what is important to get across and understand.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
So, did you have something? First of all, just thank you for coming out and for your remarks as well. For fund requests from the Historic Preservation Commission, we wouldn't be able to make a motion tonight because it wasn't formally presented on the agenda, but I'll leave that to the discussion of the commission. But there was at least a call put out then for $5,000 for this, and I just wanted the commission to be aware of that. I'm sure that they can have time to read these materials over in the coming weeks as well, and we can be in communication too. I can open it back up to questions or comments from the commission as well.
I think that's something that we will have to talk about in our subcommittee. Yeah.
Yeah, so later on, we're going to talk a little bit about some of the work the finance subcommittee has been doing related to gifts. And so I was going to address that in commissioner comments at the very end, but that might impact this as well.
And so again, thanks Lakota for that presentation. And I too just wanted to let you all know, like, that's my boss. So I work within the, TIPO office. So I just kind of wanted to see too, and I don't know if this is appropriate or if we just like talk like outside of the meeting, but like kind of what some of your thoughts at this point were, because I think that this is a really good opportunity for the Preservation Commission to support, an ongoing project to like get, since it, has been going on for a long time, and just kind of getting it to that, finish line. But again, since I'm also employed by the tribe, so I wouldn't necessarily be able to vote for it. But I very much support it. But I just wanted to see if you all had thoughts about it at this point, or if that's just something we talk about outside of this meeting.
Yeah, can't stop you guys from talking about it. That it's perfectly fine. This project, as Lakota alluded to as well, is something that I also inherited from my predecessor, and I fairly confident in saying that the HPC had a hand, I think, in the early stages of this as well, as an arm of the city, I guess you could say. I think that the city itself was also involved, along with the tribe. So I think that those were, in my mind, the three major players in moving this entire process forward. I'll also say that I don't know if anyone on this current iteration of the commission was there at the beginning of that either. So institutional knowledge, things that I'm sure COVID played a very large part in that, like you said, I think, and it stalled a lot of projects. And I know that this is something that Regina was very involved with and worked with you pretty closely with as well. I just wanted to provide that background to everyone as well, that we, as this commission, perhaps not this iteration, does have quite a long history with this project as well.
One question for you, Luis. I'm curious about the city of Kalamazoo itself providing funding.
Yep. I can't speak to it. I don't have all the information at hand, I suppose, so I can't speak to it at this point, but I know that there were funds, I believe, that were set aside at the beginning. It would not be us solely as an agent of the city funding it. It seemed that the city was putting forth funds for it as well.
Mm-hmm. What is your idea or plans in order to include those who donate or provide funding for your projects? Like, how are you recognizing those organizations?
Yes, so I think, initially, at least one of those first steps is for sure you can see on the mock-ups that there are the logos of all the current contributors to kind of who've at least stated that there is going to be, there's either been staff time or financial support and things along those lines. I think there's the potential for that. Additionally, the thought was to utilize the Kalamazoo Public Library's website as well. There had previously been some interviews that were recorded and published on the website, along with some various content that the thought was to utilize the QR codes on those markers. And I think there's the opportunity to also continue utilizing that, build that out further so that there is that acknowledgement of everybody who kind of saw this project forward. Like Luis said, there's been a lot of different people, a lot of various kind of folks who've either donated time or, are on work time, but really trying to just see this project to the finish line. And so I think there's definitely that opportunity. And, you know, one of the other things too is, you know, we can think about how if folks would be interested, you know, in kind of recording that process of what's been undertaken to get to this point, to kind of recognize this longer history of Kalamazoo. You know, like I mentioned, there were recorded interviews with at least tribal members and council members of the Match-Panashiwish tribe, but that's something that maybe we can look at expanding further. Our own department runs a oral history program. That's primarily where my background is. I was trained as a sociocultural anthropologist and doing ethnographic studies, and so a huge component of that is doing interviews, whether it's primarily ethnographic or oral history. And so that's something that we could, you know, potentially move through if that is something that folks would like to see as part of that.
Understanding that you guys got delayed so much by COVID, do you have a timeline on when you'd like to start and that kind of thing? Yes,
so I think for us, there is a huge desire to have this be completed by the end of, let's see, it would be like fiscal year 2025. We really would like to get this completed, especially with how far along we've come. So with that, you know, we definitely, we are in the process of reviewing the text within our department already. And then, you know, I think we really want to take advantage of the like planting season next year for the landscaping needs. And so with that, in particular, you know, in addition to the 5,000 that the tribe has set aside, the tribe has also identified funds to support the landscaping work. In addition, I think that's more primarily where the city of Kalamazoo funds might play into a role as well, because I believe the funds might be coming from Parks and Rec, but don't take my word for it. But just kind of thinking about where it makes the most sense and where the goals of our departments align in terms of getting both components of the project completed.
Thank you so much. That was really wonderful. I'm just as an internal comment, hearing this, I'm thinking about this entire project would have been a really good fit for our preservation planning component of our grant program. Do you think? Now I'm thinking this through now, but
I suppose
yeah.
I don't.
You don't? Okay.
Only because I think that this is a sensitive topic, and I don't think that there should have to be any competition for a project of this magnitude, and because we had already given it a abode of support before any of us were here. I mean, I totally hear where you're coming from, because we have already committed funds for the granting, and I know that we're maybe moving into it seems committing more and more funds. I just think that being respectful, and one of the things that was so important to me was being able to get in touch with the tribe, which is something that we've been doing since the beginning of this project. But I think navigating it gets difficult, as Lakota alluded to, when we have so many, to use the tired phrase, cooks in the kitchen, especially because there are so many moving parts with this project as it spans the city, the tribe, and the county. And there are many different subdivisions of each of those organizations that also have their hands involved with it. That's not in any way to say that I don't appreciate the work of anyone that's done this, but I think it's important to sometimes divide and conquer that work so it can be taken into manageable pieces and we can move forward in an actionable way. I do want to say that this project started perhaps in earnest, like this portion of it, outside of the Bronson Park larger initiative, and I'm sure that someone could give me an exact date, but maybe in around 2017, 2018, when we started looking at signage, when we started looking at landscaping, when we started to look at other things for the mound itself. The delineation, I think, is really important, and when we consider the signs, the utility of them becomes twofold, truly. if you read through the stuff, and I know that we just got it, so reading through it at another time, you'll see that there is, amongst a lot of other great stuff on there, there is language repeatedly on each one that says, please show respect. You know, I come out to Lunchtime Live almost every week, and I see people that are on the mound listening, and that might just be, if you don't recognize what's there, you wouldn't be able to show that. So I think that having that is really great. It also is able to serve as a way to educate folks to be able to tap into something that they might not have known before, from the voice of the folks whose history it is too, which I think is great. All those things then coming together, I think this has been one that I did inherit, but I think it is such an important project for something that we as a city, you know, we could finally make a really good choice on this and move it in the right direction. And we've been on that, but like you were saying, just getting across the finish line, I think with so many folks can always be tricky with working with such a large group.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, please.
I get to play the talk, so this is coming from my heart. Bonjour, my name is Jody Palmer, and I'm the vice chair of Matchi-Benatchiwich. Actually, this project started way, way before Lakota was here, before any of you were on where you're sitting. It started back in the 1990s. And I've been involved with this for a quarter of a century. And I get very emotional because this is our homelands here. We have a new homelands, yes, but this is where we feel is truly our home. When we got our markers for the city marking our reservation, that was a great day. We had a great celebration. This is something that is very important to us. And yes, we are going to contribute funding also. But I think that it's important that the city remembers the people that were here first. We're seeing land acknowledgements all over the United States. I used to be a professor at Western. Western was the first university in Michigan to make that public land acknowledgement. And this is something that is even more meaningful, I believe, than just saying words. This is actually putting our beginnings out there for people to see and experience. And I'm sorry, I didn't prepare anything to say. I'm just speaking from my heart, but I really wanted you to realize how long this has been going on. And I surely do hope in my lifetime that I will be able to see some protections put in place. That's all I have to say. Miigwech. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So thank you again for speaking. I'm sure that we'll be in touch. It seems like we've been in increasing contact recently. So and again, I just want to say too that I appreciate everyone's help with the entire project, and you know, it has been going on for longer than I anticipated as well. And I think that I think we all have the common idea of where we want to go with it, but sometimes execution and can be the hardest part of a plan. So thank you again, and we'll be in touch again soon, I'm sure.
Miigwech.
Yep.
Okay, next up, Jacob.
I don't think that Jacob is here, so
I do not see him.
We'll move along. There might have been some confusion in the emails as well, so
Okay.
We'll move along.
All right, and so we'll move on to the candidate for the open seat, Eleanor Harris.
Hello.
Hello. Can you just start to tell us a little about yourself?
Sure. So I'm Eleanor. I graduated from K College a month ago. I'm very happy to have some more free time.
Congratulations.
Thank you. The free time is kind of what brought me here initially. I studied history at K College. Initially started with like local history, archives, and then transitioned into historic preservation while working on my senior thesis, which examined how a restoration effort in a critical space of an abandoned penitentiary that they made into a historic site would impact visitors' interpretation of the site's history and of mass incarceration. So after working on that project, I decided that historic preservation was the route I wanted to go on, which led me to an internship with Restore Oregon, which is a historic preservation nonprofit out of Portland, Oregon. Last week, I was promoted to the preservation programs coordinator there. So I'm very into the preservation world currently. There, I work predominantly answering public inquiries about preservation, which I think certainly relates to the work that the Commission's doing, which is connecting community members with resources, trying to assist in encouraging our sense of community through this tangible history that we have. Additionally, I work with historic preservation easements as well. So I'm familiar with a few different aspects of, I guess, the historic preservation world. So that's kind of me, like in a nutshell. But
so are you living in Kalamazoo then?
I am, yeah.
Okay, so you're working in Oregon, but
Yeah, so I work remotely for Restore Oregon, but I also work at the Kalamazoo Valley Museum. So.
What would be your focus as a member? We have people focusing on DEY. We have some of our committee members who are focusing on grants and giving money to different organizations. So
Sure.
what do you think, or what would you like to focus on if on the committee?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I don't want to, give the cop-out answer of like anything, but I truly am interested in a lot of different aspects. Currently, with the answering inquiries, it's a lot of grant stuff. People, need money and they need resources, so I connect them with those resources, and I found a lot of, I guess that's been very fulfilling, to try and assist people with the work that they're doing and that they care so much about. But also, I have done a lot of research with trying to understand how preservation can be used for climate resilience, affordable housing, also just addressing a more complete history, which I think is really important and also a very useful tool for historic preservation. Like, it's not, maybe the common misconception that people have that, we're going to just put a bunch of rules up and then make a place pretty and then, tuck it away. Like, that it can be used to revitalize and assist a community. So, I mean, maybe anything. I'm really open to learning too. I'm still new to this work, so.
did you live in the area prior to K College?
Sorry?
Are you from the area initially?
Oh, no, I'm from Wisconsin originally,
Okay.
but yeah, I moved here for school and I'm planning on staying in the area.
Great.
I like it. So.
Well, welcome.
Yeah, thank you.
Are there any other questions from the commission?
Okay, well, thank you so much for taking the hot seat there. We will, I'm sure the commissioners will discuss this amongst themselves now, and then there will be a vote that's made. The way that this vote's made, as a refresher for everyone in the room, is that the commission will vote to make a recommendation of appointment of the applicant to the city commission and the mayor. It's quite the mouthful, so when we get to that point again, I'm more than happy to assist with the wording of the motion. All motions must be made in the affirmative, regardless, so. Thank you, and you can have a seat now if you'd like.
Thank you, everybody.
Do we have any commissioner comments on this?
I think she has a wealth of knowledge. She is eager to learn and be involved. I think she would be a great asset to the committee.
Can I make a motion?
You are welcome to make a motion.
Great. I move that the commission makes a recommendation to the mayor to appoint Eleanor Harris to the Historic Preservation Commission.
I second.
And do we have a roll call vote? Is that how this works? All right. Kayla?
Yes.
Fred?
Yes.
Lene?
Yes.
Myself? Yes. And Catherine?
Yes.
Okay, so I will move that recommendation along to the city commission and the mayor at their next meeting, and I will let you know the outcome of that as well. But you have the recommendation from the commission, so thank you for coming in. Yeah.
Okay, the financial report.
Oh, now we're on to the fun stuff, right? Okay. Always trying to learn and make these a little bit better. So what I continue to learn is that when we're looking at the financial report, as I alluded to last time, making this into an Excel spreadsheet is not the most readable thing because the number of cells it gets divided into. I have to do a little bit of math each time myself to remember where the numbers that I need to see are. And I figured out that we just have to look at the top line. So we can just keep it right there. The amount of money that we have left in the city account then is $1,338.25, and we've spent, $3,552.02. Bulk of that money, I think, from this year was MHPN, which I did budget for last year, and I was a hill that I was, I guess, ready to die on because I really wanted us to be able to have the opportunity to go. So I guess that hopefully explains where most of the expenses went towards. If there's any other questions, though, I'd be happy to talk about them.
Any questions? Anything else, Luis?
No, I was more excited for the next one anyways.
Okay.
The O'Connor budget.
O'Connor
So,
Fund.
This one was looking kind of, I was making it look kind of boring, so I thought, what could I do to zhuzh it up a bit? So I started putting the differences between months, just so we could understand what we were making. We made 3.7 approximately % interest on both of the accounts in the past month. When the numbers get bigger, that 3.7% increase starts to look larger, right? I thought that that would help us track things as well, instead of just seeing the single month numbers, right? 3.7% of $400,000 equates to a good chunk of change. So I wasn't going to put the percents on there because I think it speaks volumes to actually show the difference of those numbers. So just wanted to show that to everyone to see, because it was cool for me to see, and I wanted to be able to track it, and it was good to see that jump up. So, any questions about these ones?
All right, 106 reviews then.
These are kind of three rather dry things in a row, so I can start to put like colored headings or something maybe too. Just a quick reminder for folks for what the 106 reviews are for us. We have a programmatic agreement between the city, in a nutshell, and the state that says that the Historic Preservation Coordinator is permitted to review HUD dispersed funds in the city instead of having to send them up to the state. There's tracking requirements for these and then reporting, so I present them to you on a quarterly basis. This is for the first 2 quarters of 2024. These reviews can be divided into 2 different categories. Projects that I review that do fall into National Register eligible or National Register districts that I have a little bit more of an in-depth review upon. That is the first half of this list. Currently, we have 8 projects that were reviewed under those. The second half of the list is dedicated to properties that are not National Register eligible or National Register nominated. And I think the nature of the beast, if you will, is that there's always going to be more of those. So at this point in the year, or at the point when I made it, I just got some more in today where I had 44 reviews that fell into the second category. I think what we're going to start to see in the future is as we continue to conduct surveys, a lot more properties are going to be determined to be National Register eligible, and I think that we're going to start to see the amount of reviews that are conducted that fall into the first category of being National Register eligible or National Register nominated are going to drastically increase, especially if you look at the first half, you'll see that a lot of them are in Edison. Edison was not completely surveyed until 2022, I don't think, so none of those grain of salt, but those properties may not have been captured before they were surveyed. Looking now at the neighborhoods of, Northside, Oakwood, Douglas, and should know the last one, but it's escaping my mind right now. I think that we're going to see another increase in the amount of properties that fall into that first category of being National Register eligible. This does not necessarily mean, first of all, it does not mean that they're in a historic district through the survey. I do just want to clarify that. Eligibility does not necessarily impose any restrictions on the properties either. So long-winded answer just to remind you all of what 106 is in this capacity through the programmatic agreement. And I will entertain any questions.
If there are no questions, we'll move on to action items, the O'Connor Fund grant making, the grant recommendations.
And I can read this, or whoever would like to read it can read it too. So I don't know if, would you like to read it, Pam? Okay. Do you have it printed off, or do you? Okay, awesome.
Whoops. This is from Luisa's staff report. Grant recommendations. We met a week and a half ago and made some recommendations for your approval tonight. They total $20,000, and we determined then, since we were not able to make grants last year, we would make two $20,000 in grants this year. We would use the $10,000 that we talked about using last year and $10,000 for this year. The ones that rose to the top in terms of scoring were the Stewart Area Restoration Association, the Civic Theater, and the Disability Network. All of these projects are building rehabilitation projects. Stewart neighborhood is going to paint its offices. The Civic Theater is going to do masonry work, and Disability Network is going to do some exterior repairs to their drive-through area. I think their building was probably built as a drive-through bank because it's kind of unusual, but it's there. And it's a very cool mid-century modern building, and we were all kind of enthusiastic about that. So we are recommending to you that you approve these grants, and if so, we would also want to, at the same time, authorize Luis and Kyle to work on getting agreements signed with the grantees.
Thank you so much, Pam, and thank you for writing the report. I frankly just took everything that you wrote and put it in there, so thank you for writing the report as well. Want to open this one up, obviously, for discussion amongst the group now. I trust that folks have had time to read this before we got here as well, but just for reminder's sake, we're looking at committing funds totaling $20,000 to 3 different organizations. For the Stewart Neighborhood Association, and I know that I'm butchering the name there, the award amount was $4,748. For the Civic Theater, the amount was $7,626. And for the Disability Network of Southwest Michigan, the award amount was $7,626. I also want to clarify that the Stewart Neighborhood Association they were the only group that was recommended to receive their full grant amount of $4,748, which is what they requested, and the other 2 groups requested $10,000, but to fit it into our budget, I think the amount of money was dropped down from the $10,000 down to the $7,626 for both of them, as they both requested the same amount of money. It was dropped down by the same percentage, if you will. I reached out to both of those organizations, and they both said that that would still work for them in their efforts as well. I've included the grant applications in there as well, so people can look them over. Just want to take the 1 second or whatever to say that I think the grant subcommittee did a great job too, so I want to thank everyone that was involved with that for sitting through a rather long meeting, dealing with some of my inquiries, and we've moved along quite a ways from where we started with this when I started in this gig to where we are now of perhaps being in the position to be able to make grants. So I will hand it over to the commission if there's questions, comments, or motions to be put forward.
Are there any questions from the commission? If, as we're moving to approve, do each of these are done separately, or can they be done together?
My opinion, if there's not going to be, if no one at this point has indicated that there would be issue with any of the three, then I think you could just say that the total amount be approved, so 20,000 be approved as to be split up as indicated in the staff report, I think would be fine.
We have a motion to approve.
I move to approve.
The language
Yeah,
might want to be.
you need to be more
sorry.
specific on the language.
Yeah, it might want to be something along the lines of approve the grants totaling $20,000 to be divided as indicated in the staff report, while also aligning with the process that's been already outlined by the granting subcommittee, and I think that that would cover our bases, so.
Yes.
And to put together agreements and have them, to begin the process or to execute the process of agreements between the grantee and us and Kyle. Now, that's going to be a mouthful, so we can certainly take it in chunks if you would like.
Can you just say so moved?
Huh?
Or you can say so moved.
Someone could also say so moved. Okay.
All right, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, for our roll call vote, Kayla,
Yes.
Fred,
Yes.
Lene,
Yes.
myself, yes. Catherine?
Yes.
Awesome. So congratulations to the folks from Stewart that are here this evening. That means that it's all the way done now, and all the I's are dotted and T's are crossed on our end, and we'll make sure that we stay in contact with you moving forward throughout the project process so we can make it go smoothly. I know we'll make it go smoothly, so it's the attitude to have. But thank you guys for coming out, and thank you guys for participating in our first year of actually making grants as well. So this was a great success for us.
Okay, on to the 2025 budget review.
All right. More fun. I always get all the fun stuff for you guys. One of my colleagues put this together. We have a new person who's running the finances now, Chelsea Hubbard Downs. So she was kind enough to put together a fun spreadsheet. I do actually think it's fun. That goes back and shows the money that we've had from, it starts in 2022 and it moves through our potential budget next year. Excel is not my favorite for when you put it into PDFs because it kind of gets all funky, especially because the sheet needs to go over to the other side. So the first column of numbers that we see is the 2022 budget. The next one is the 2022 actuals. Then you can move over to the 2023 budget and the 2023 actuals, which we were within a pretty close amount of money those 2 years. I guess I kind of want us to focus on the 2024 budget and the 2024 actuals, which are on the next page, before we move on to the 2025 stuff. So if we can keep this screen up here right now, we can see that in the past, what had happened, I think, and especially after the pandemic, we were overvaluing probably the amount of sales that we were going to be making as a commission. That's fine, I think, but we needed then to adjust it to make sure that we were being realistic and we weren't digging a hole that we couldn't get out of, right? So I think that we weren't going to be hitting the $2,000 sales mark, so I brought it down. We were budgeted this year to make $1,000, and we haven't done that, and I don't think that we're going to do that, which is also fine, but it's a learning experience for us, right? The rest of those are pretty much going to be zero for right now. We'll come back to it. Moving down into the expenditures, so the top half, and for the folks that are sitting in the audience, I know it's probably hard to read, I'm sorry, but I'll try to walk us through it. The second category is expenditures on the bottom portion underneath the bolded text, because I'm sure it might be a little bit blurry. It would be for me. I don't have good eyes. The first one is operating supplies. Next is professional and contractual services, bank fees, which we won't have any of, memberships and subscriptions, professional development, and fundraising. I think another thing that I will task the financial committee with, and this would not be a very difficult one, I think, but is codifying where money comes out of so we can actually budget it appropriately. I think, I know at least for my part before, I was handing things over and I wasn't necessarily giving the codes of where I wanted it to go. I know it was coming out of within reason. I knew that like the MHPN subscriptions would come out of membership subscriptions. But I think if we could button that down a little bit more, it makes it so it's not magic, it's just math for us, and we can start to understand, okay, we're going to know that this is coming out of here, and we can move forward in a very calculated way. So, are we all on the same page thus far?
Yes.
Sweet. So, now we move on to the 2025 projected budget. I just said, let's just kind of get down to brass tacks. I don't think we're going to make probably, unless you guys tell me different, I don't know if we're going to be looking at projected revenues for next year or not. I think that the weight has shifted a little bit in this commission, right? Not in a bad direction. I think that we've redefined what we're looking at, and I think that the direction now is a lot more education, outreach, and uplift, if you will, right? If we come down to the other things, I don't think that we're going to see a lot of these other categories, such as interest in investments, like I said, private contributions. Fundraising, we certainly could see, but I think the bulk of our fundraising is generally going to be going into the O'Connor Fund, and I think it makes a lot more sense for our fundraising to be deposited into the O'Connor Fund, where we'll be gaining the interest on it. I know that we discussed this last time, and the question becomes, this is a mock one, so do we want to move some money from the O'Connor Fund to have in the city account so we can have something if we needed it at the drop of a hat? We'll come to it at the end, I suppose. Looking at the expenditures, I also adjusted those a little bit, just to be a little bit more realistic. Operating supplies, and I think that we could codify these within, we don't need to do this tonight, but I think that we could figure out what fits into these categories as specified here. Operating supplies, I don't want to be a catch-all by any means. I don't think that we're ever going to be buying pens, but that's, I guess, traditionally maybe what that category would be for. Moving along to professional and contractual services, that would probably be hiring folks for workshops, or I can't really think of any others off the top of my head. I think that's what we would probably be doing, though, is hiring folks to come and render services such as the workshops. I don't anticipate other things, I suppose, at this time. Bank fees, we're not going to have any expenses. Memberships and subscriptions, I think that we can easily estimate that we want to be in good standing with the MHPN. I think that we're going to continue to pay the dues for the MHPN. Professional development, from what I understand, would be the things for me. We could take then like the membership fee for me out of the professional development bucket. I think it's important to have that division of funds there. Fundraising is one that we probably have not looked at before, and it's one that we haven't looked at in a couple years. I think that we could use fundraising. This one might not be the appropriate place and we can move it, but if we needed to put out mailers, if we wanted to be able to alert the folks in the community like we did for the opening of the tax credit, or if there was an event that we wanted to push, or for example, the mailers that we sent out for the grant opportunity, we do need to cover those expenses. Mail's not that expensive, but again, I want us to make sure that we know where the money's coming from. That's kind of my rundown, and now I'll open it up, so.
Yeah, well, first of all, I really love that you put this together because I was going to be going through the minutes from our last couple of years of meetings to just figure out what we spent.
Yeah.
That was on my agenda for the next month or so.
That would have been painful. That would have
So-
taken a couple months, so.
Yeah, so I appreciate this.
Yes.
Second, the $1,700 in the professional services this year, was that the conference here, the conference registrations?
Let me look real quick.
And if so, is that the right space for that?
So I want to say right now, since I have not been delegating where things should go, I assume full responsibility for things perhaps not being in the right place. I can find out what the 1,700 is, but I would have to do some math. I mean, it came up maybe to more than 1,700. Let me look real quick. And if you guys have some other questions, I can.
Well, the
dig
reason
into
I ask is if it's not in there, then that $1,300 that we have in the reserve is not right either.
So I've done the math a couple times, and it is something, but I'm. Can you go up one page?
No, in the last page, there's $1,700 in the professional contractual services expense.
And then Louise, I'm curious, 3,400, I guess I'm just wondering what we're going to spend $3,400 on for professional and contractual services, or what you're thinking on that was for the 2025 budget.
Yeah.
I see that in the past.
Yeah, Patrick, I'm probably going to come back to yours. Sorry. So.
Or to compound questions, you can hold on mine if you'd like.
No, that's fine. Really, it's just been tracking the past expenses and trying to forecast from,
Okay.
is what I was doing. And I think
Yeah.
that I was just trying to, and I don't have it up, so I'll bring it up real quick again in front of me, but,
Okay, I see the historic, the conference was 2280 invoiced here back in the expenditure detail report.
yep.
And I don't see where that has come out of this year.
So that was probably split up amongst two as well. I don't,
Okay.
it would be my guess. Catherine, these can be adjusted as well if we want them to. They just need to be balanced out too between the revenues and the expenses, but
Yeah.
we can balance them.
Well, no, that's great. I think looking at past years' actual expenditures is great. I guess I'm just curious. I know this is probably a lot of work, and maybe something that the finance subcommittee can do
Yeah.
to replace all Patrick's
So,
work.
and
that
we
he
have
did.
to move rather quickly on this one.
How
So,
quickly?
This is our city budget, and it needs to be in to folks by, and I will get that answer for you right now. That's why I'm bringing it to you today for review. It does not necessarily need to be voted on today, I don't think, but I just want to keep it in mind that time is of the essence on this one. I don't mean to put pressure on folks, and I will get the date for you right now.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, that's what I thought too.
I think we're trying to be a little bit preemptive this year and get it. And I have to comb through some, so the date that we need to have this to folks by is 9/3, September 3.
Okay, so if we have a draft budget for the next meeting to approve, we can do that.
Yes.
Okay.
I didn't mean to scare folks, but I just want to make sure that we're staying on the right track.
No, this is something we were talking about just the other day, so this is good to have.
Yeah, I think it would be good to gain a better understanding, and I think it's great to look at, as I said, the last few years' actuals and expenditures, but I'm just curious, well, what is in each category, especially the professional and contractual services, what counts for that? And as you said, maybe it was inconsistent with how things were coded, and that's understandable, but I'm just,
So
that
we
will help us in the
I
future.
think that looking at the overall amount of money would be the most helpful, because we can define what we want these to be used for now, and we have complete complete power to do so. I could dig back through the previous years, but
That sounds like it's what I'm going to do.
yeah, I think that it does not necessarily matter if we're going to be changing what we're doing moving forward is what we should really, we can make this into whatever we want now. If we need to get names changed, I don't know if we can do that, but we could look at things and I think to make them the way that we want to see them in a way that's logical for us.
I also like to gain a better understanding about, see how I put this, how costs are split between the city, what the city of Kalamazoo's budget should account for. As we've learned in the last few months, none of our budget comes from the city budget. All of our budget comes from our own activities and the O'Connor Fund. But that's then I wonder, should the O'Connor Fund be paying for all of these things?
Can you rephrase the first part of the question? Sorry.
I'm wondering if there's a conversation to be had about how and what the city of Kalamazoo's budget should be paying for in relation to anything that this commission or you as a coordinator do. For example, your conference fees, should that come out of the O'Connor Fund, as our entire budget seems to be coming out of in the near future? Or is that something that the city should be covering? Just as an example.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, just is looking at the totality of this, if there is anything, should there be anything that should come from elsewhere?
I have a feeling I know what the answer is, and it's probably no, especially
Okay.
as this was a self-sustaining commission for so long, purely by revenue generation. The question probably never needed to arise, and I think that's what caused the division between the two fund sources, if you will. I guess is the best that I can answer it. Sorry if that was
That's
a
okay.
truncated answer. So.
I see Pam raising her hand. Maybe she has insight.
Sure.
Because I was at one time actually responsible for the finances of the commission and also am at least in part responsible for the O'Connor Fund, I will say that in my recollection of the 20 to 30 years, that professional development funds for the coordinator have not ever come out of the money, the revenue that the commission, the Preservation Commission, has raised. It's always come from the department. For example.
No, yeah,
That's
these
one of
are
those.
fine discussions to have. I guess I don't know how worthwhile they are to have here because I will have to talk with other folks back in the office and understand what this all looks like. And I guess I can't give a 100% answer of yes or no.
Yeah, that's fine. I think that we don't need to have any answers right now. It just is as we have been delving much more deeply into the finances and trying to gain a broader understanding. More questions arise, and if the answer is whatever the answer is, the point is better understanding.
Yep. So, I don't know if there's more discussion on it. It sounds as though the financial subcommittee is going to take a crack at it and perhaps bring back an adjusted budget for the August meeting, with the understanding that at that time there will be a motion made on the adoption of that so we can get it to the folks within the city, CPED, in a reasonable amount of time for them to submit it for full submission. I don't know where it goes necessarily after us, but I just want to make sure that we're being good team players with them, and I know that they wanted to get ahead of the curve. Perhaps was October in the past, but I know that the new accounting people or the new money folks in CPED were like, we want to get ahead of this, so there's not any scrambling at the end to get to the finish line. So does that sound good to everyone?
Yeah.
Sweet, thank you.
Okay, did we have anything else on the budget review?
Nope.
Okay, so on to the coordinator's report.
Yeah. Okay, so I did just want to recap about the gravestone cleaning. We did have to move because there was some inclement weather that was forecasted. We moved it from a Saturday to a Sunday, which could have affected some people's capacity to attend. I know that Kyle wasn't able to attend because of that. I think we had 9 folks that came out, and it was a great time, I thought. Gary did a wonderful job of leading the introduction and education for that. I came away with a sore arm from scrubbing for so long, but we had really great weather where it wasn't scorching. And I think people generally just really like these events. There's kind of an instant gratification component of it to see the stone go from dirty to clean in such a short amount of time. So thank you again, Gary, for leading that effort and for organizing it. And thank everyone else for coming out to that event as well. Can move down now to the review types. Put this together last week, and they might not be accurate as of today regarding that, but administrative reviews with no permit up to this point have been 3 administrative with permits, which are generally the bulk, have been 15, and hearings we've had 18. It's been a rather high hearing rate this year, I feel, for a total of 36 reviews, generating $2,055 worth of associated fees. So that's all that I have.
All right, on to commissioner comments.
Okay, so Patrick, feel free to jump in since you were also there. The Finance Subcommittee, we did not submit a report because we met 2 days ago? Yes, 2 days ago. So after the reports were due, we had a great meeting. Kyle also attended, and we held it at Pam's house. So we talked about, talked quite a bit, but we talked about creating a financial state to kind of better understanding our financial state. We talked about the budget review, which we thought would be October. That's okay. And our plan is, and the primary thing we spoke about was a spending policy. In the last year or so, we've received a lot of requests for gifts from the O'Connor Fund. Of course, we've developed the O'Connor Grant Fund, and that I think has let the public know that there are funds to be spent, which is a good thing. And of course, we just approved the first disbursement of those funds for that grant program. Patrick and I discussed back in April, and then again at the group this last week here, about the need to create some sort of criteria, guidelines for our spending in the form of gifts. And so that's something that we're going to be doing in the next few months. Is our plan was to kind of create a nice, tidy financial package in which we talk about the general state of the finances, budget, which that might shift now, of course, and then propose a spending policy to be adopted by this commission, so we can and then hopefully publicized as well, so that people can know kind of generally what we look for or what we need in order to consider requests for gifts. And so to that effect, what we had planned to ask today, and of course we've received a request with a lot of merit tonight, as we have in past meetings as well. We'd hope to ask for a pause on the disbursement of gifts or the consideration of gifts until the subcommittee has time to present a proposal for a spending policy for discussion to this commission, and our hope was to do that in October. Does that cover it, Patrick?
That covers it.
Okay. Other thoughts or questions?
Will we be able to review before you come up with the final copy?
Oh,
For draft purposes?
absolutely.
I totally agree, and I think I've made that comment before. I mean, we don't have any guidelines on, what the person should bring in order to accept the gift. what is the criteria of it being a gift? So I agree, we need to have some kind of guidelines in place. And I think it's a good thing to place it on pause for now until we have, because I guess my fear, I work for the government, so my fear is, we get sued, like, she gave it to her and she didn't give it to me. Oh, God, so if we have some kind of guidelines, we're able to, make it fair when we giving gifts. So it's my 2 cents.
I think I agree with the fact that there should be some guidelines. I don't know about, I guess, the wordage of like policy. I'd have to think about that more, but I guess for me, I don't agree with going on pause while we're developing, I guess you guys are developing the guidelines. So I don't know if we all need to be, in, what's the word? In consensus about that or not. But, I think since we did have a request that we heard about in this meeting, I don't think I would agree with being on pause.
Okay.
I don't think the pause is an official policy. I think that's more that I think things could still come up, but we would like to have, this kind of stemmed from a perspective that we don't even know what we would have to give. And so we need to have a handle on that. And then from there, we can determine, all of our steps beyond that. But that's what started this, is we just didn't know, do we have funds to give? Is that something that we can do? And so, I take your point.
Yeah, I think we look very closely each month at the spendable portion of the O'Connor Fund monies, and so we see that we have those monies, but we haven't done in recent years. We haven't done a report on how the spendable has grown. We have never spent much out of the spendable. We are starting to do that now in the last couple of years, and so we want to ensure that that our actions are sustainable, that we're creating this pretty intensive grant program that we have spent a lot of time doing, and we want to make sure that we can sustain grants out of those funds in the coming years. What we don't want to have happen is to begin spending the money and creating a lot of excitement and goodwill, and then having to take a pause for a few years while we build back up our spendable, right? That would be a challenge. So, and we're not at that point yet, but I think we're being proactive here, or the attempt that we're trying to be proactive in looking at how much can we really safely feel like we can be spending each year out of those funds and maintain the activities that we want to be doing in the coming years as well. So it's more about being responsible stewards of the monies is the thought. And we've gotten, we had a request tonight, of course, and I said it has a lot of merit and a lot of history with this commission, but we've had requests for funds. We had one at the last meeting as well. Maybe the one before that. We've received a lot of requests for funds in recent months. So I think the point was just to give us some space to thoughtfully, proactively consider the state of our finances and what we want it to look like in the coming years. And when we have that discussion, I think my hope is that the plan is not to come to you with a set in stone proposal. We'll have a proposal, and we'll hope that there's discussion and edits and all of those things as well.
Also, since the O'Connor Fund is now pretty much our sole source of funds, we just want to make sure we're spending that money wisely.
Right.
Yeah.
I appreciate your thoughts on that. I guess since I don't, look at the finances as much as you guys do, and I don't really still like have a full understanding of like the two funds. So, but yeah, I guess and I think one of you mentioned, we look at the like the expense or the financial reports, and we see that money is there. So I'm just confused, and I guess I'll see what you guys come up with about like how much money we have versus like since we see these amounts, right? And I get that you're talking about like being proactive and making sure that the funds are, like not overdrawn and that kind of thing. But so I guess I'll just wait to see what you guys come up with. But I don't think that means though that we're like, because Patrick, you mentioned, you're not saying this is like a policy, but it kind of seems like what both of your approaches would be, even if, we were to consider a request as a commission. So yeah, I guess I'm just a little surprised about that. So, but.
And I guess I want to hop in real quick too. The way that the funds have and always will be dispersed through this board is that anyone frankly could come and ask us for money. The direction of the O'Connor Fund is to spend money on historic preservation in the city of Kalamazoo, which is rather wide open. So I agree that a funding policy is probably be very helpful and guide us in spending that money. We probably also don't want it to be so restrictive that we find that we can't spend money on anything.
Right.
So I appreciate that effort to happen. That being said, I think that a majority of these conversations of folks coming forward to ask for money result in them talking to me in one way or another. I think it's one way that I feel that we can help folks, and it's also shows that we have visibility in the community. I don't know if that I can say that I will ever bar anyone from coming to the meeting to ask for money either. And I just want to make that distinction then as well, that folks are always welcome to come, and it'll be, and I don't think you guys are saying that, but it'll always be then the discretion and the responsibility probably, and I'm always here to support the commission, but of the commission to say, hey, right now we're probably not going to be considering making any disbursements. Thank you. Would you like to come back at a later time? And as I said, I'd be more than happy to assist in those conversations, and I don't think that I'm saying that about any grant proposal any proposal at this time, but I just think maybe to clarify for Kayla, regarding the different amount of money that we have, you're right, and I made a note here in Sharpie because I don't have a pen regarding how does the money accrue for the spendable. We know that we're making about 3.7%, let's say, over the last month in the endowment, but how does the spendable look for the growth? And that's a very good question.
That won't change the spendable. We'll get the.
No, I know. Yeah. I want to know how are we gaining the spendable because we haven't spent in so long. So I will look into that and I will get a concrete answer for that. I don't think you were here yet when we had rather lengthy explanation from the Kalamazoo Community Foundation talking about the difference in the funds. I can get the slides and we can also go over it and talk about it too because it did take a long time. I learned a lot and I think the whole commission did just to get a better idea and we can go over the entire thing.
I wanna also put in, I've been on this board or this commission for almost 4 years. I've seen more people come now, literally in the past 6 months, than I have ever seen. Mm-hmm. So the bottom line is the word is out. Good, bad, or indifferent. I'm not saying which way I'm going, but the word is out. This is only the beginning. And from my perspective, I don't want us to get to the point of we start declining people because we don't have money or we have given out everything to, just going to use an example, real estate development, and the homeless didn't get any. So that's why I would prefer to have some guidelines because perception, as being a government entity, we can be perceived negatively or as favoritism. Oh, they're always friends with them, but I'm new here, so I didn't know that, So to keep down that confusion and to also make it fair, put it out there for everybody, because right now, I'm gonna be honest, and I don't want anybody to take it offense, but the people who have come were people who knew somebody on the board. I want people who don't know anything about us to come. But they surf the web, find us on the website, and see that we're giving out gifts. I want everybody. But the people who have come, literally, they knew somebody who knew somebody on the board. And that's not, that's not necessarily fair. So I just want to make it fair. And in order to make it fair, you got to put it in writing. What are your guidelines?
Very clear, though. We started off all of the giving with 2 consecutive gifts that we gave to Community Homeworks, and I just want to acknowledge that as well. I don't know if fairness is really an appropriate word to use here, because the people that are going to be proposing the gifts of those folks, they've been nothing but proposals. So we've never denied anyone.
No, and I'm not saying we
because
have.
we've never drafted anything, and it would be the
And
board.
I'm not saying we have, but I don't want us to go down that path.
I think that it
and
gets.
then we get to the point of, well, I don't have enough money, and because we didn't gave it all to so and so,
Yeah, I think that parliamentary, if you look at the procedure, it becomes very easy. If no one brings the motion forward, then it will never get to a vote.
Understood.
So people need to be, if someone was motivated as such, if someone came and presented, I want X amount of dollars, someone on the board, I'm assuming, or someone in conjunction with the person who's proposing would need to go home, draft up an agreement, bring it back to us. We'd have to do a lot of work in looking at it, I think, come back with it. And we're looking at just the gift side of things, I think. And if no one does that here, then it doesn't even move forward to.
Understood. But what about that organization? They don't know anything about us. They didn't know that there's money out there they can get.
I guess to me that becomes a moot point, because the onus is 100% on the organization who is looking for the money. There's no way that I can reasonably guarantee that every institution and person in the city of Kalamazoo would be aware of the money for historic preservation, nor would it apply to every institution or person in the city.
I understand, that's your opinion. I just don't think that that's fair. And I agree with having some kind of guidelines posted on the website. If you're looking for money and you're going through the city of Kalamazoo, bam, there it is. It's not, oh, I know you, and I know, can you invite me to your meeting? That's not, I'm sorry, I'm just looking at it.
It's also in the ordinance, which is a very public document that we are permitted to make gifts. So that is a very forward-facing document if people are willing to go through it. I guess I don't want the insinuation to start to arise that the only people that have come to me are people that know me or a board member in some capacity to be able to ask for money, and then we're instantly giving them money, because I just don't feel that that's the case. I think that we can look at the division of monies that we're giving. Can be the grants, which applies to a subsect of the community, being nonprofits that are 50 years or older. And that certainly serves one subsect, but there are other folks that are not going to fall into that. And I think that if we do want to further some of the missions that align with our mission statement, we might need to think outside the box a little bit. At least having them come to speak is a great way to at least get the conversation started. And then we can certainly say after that, hey, we don't think this aligns at this time, or we do think it aligns at this time. And certainly when we have some kind of financial document that will help us solidify and codify what we think that alignment is.
So I think we are all united in feeling that there should be some kind of guidelines, right? Which I think we all agree with. But then for me, I was just I don't know if the ability of, or just your kind of recommendation of pausing until we get those, which could be next year. Because, you said you would present like in October, right? But then it would take some time, I'm guessing, to...
Sure. So our thought is that we would take some time to create kind of I know policy is a strong word. That's what we've been using so far, but it doesn't have to be as stringent as that. Policies can be rather free form as well, and agile, and that's kind of the thought here. So the thought was we would present in October. If you feel more comfortable with us coming to you in September instead with that, I think that we could probably make that work. We've done a lot of work
Yeah.
on it already. So I think if September seems more palatable to come to the commission with some recommendations or a draft at least, and then we could have that discussion. I mean, that theoretically, if the commission feels good about it, we could adopt that proposal that evening, right?
I don't mean to jump up your timeline, but I'm just like saying too, just the idea of pausing until that's put into
Yeah.
place, right? Like that's
But
my main.
that could be September, right? If we all sat here and agreed on the draft and wanted to make it a final copy, then that could be done rather quickly. I don't think any of us want to drag this out a year.
No,
or
the
to next
October was
year.
just from where we were assuming the budget was going to be lying.
Right, that's where we got October.
That's where we got October, but now that's moved up to August. So, yeah, that was the reason for October. But I think September is doable too. We can move that up.
Yeah, there's no desire to drag our feet and drag this process out. It's more so just to try to take a more complete look, and so we have a better idea of where the money stands and what we can do in the community.
How many folks are on the finance subcommittee right now?
Right now, just Patrick and I. However, in this last meeting, because of the involvement of the O'Connor Fund, Pam attended as well, and Kyle, as chair, also attended that meeting.
So there are 3 committee members.
Yes.
And perhaps, Kayla, if you'd like to be invited maybe to one of those to, just to look them over too. I don't know if it needs to be, I'm not trying to commit you to something else, but if there wanted to be involvement too, we still would not be a quorum. Might be another option as well moving forward, just to look through this patch of it, if you will, so.
If you'd like to be involved, we'd love to have you.
Or to have at least a draft of it sent over as they work on it too would be completely fine. Yeah.
Sure. Yep, just let us know, Kayla. Or anybody else. I mean, I think we could have 4. Is that correct? We could have 4 commission members? Okay.
Do we have any other comments before adjournment? All right.
Who? Oh, yeah, that guy? Yeah, that's right, you are here. Yeah, it was.